I'm not Joseph Lease and wouldn't pretend to be David Lloyd. And we decided to trade off because it's easier on our voices and gentler on your ears. So I'll read for 15, 20 minutes, and then Joseph will read for 15 to 20 minutes. I'm coming back to Berkeley after almost 15 years being away, and I thought I would start with a couple of, let's say, homage to people that I knew here that I love very much. The first one being Alfred Arteaga, the great Chicano poet, who taught here for many years until his very untimely death a couple of years ago. And I'm pleased to say that, well, not pleased really to say, but I'm happy to have been able to do this. I published his last book in my little press, Cuss Books, which a couple of copies of which I still have and which are on the table here. And like so much of Alfred's work, it was bilingual. And shortly after he died, I decided I would translate one of the Spanish poems from it, and I thought in Alfred's honor here in Berkeley, I would read that translation to start with. The poem is called Inspiración in Spanish. Inspiration is the translated title. In the film, it is her, the foreigner, her who moves the protagonist fixed in the whiteness of the light, and in the black of the infinite also, simply because she speaks French. In the scene, I recall, she halts, waits for the rains of war, all right, metaphors for conflict and for blood, but rains, all the same, just as rains are at the moment of meeting with an act of violent beauty. The marble of a goddess's hand commits itself beneath the writing, like a memory still persisting. It is, as the improvised script has it, beauty that delays and not the actress, is the root of waves and of tides, which simply are her familiars. It is the landscape that is sex for her, more than the breathing of the hills, the dreams of the impassive oaks. But in the evening, outside on the square, she is alone and away from the image, away from the sets and from the history that's wrapped in a frozen syntax, as if they were stones, words. With that, the figure of the woman knows both sculpture and rains, but something of French words, she knows nothing of that. Why speech, reproduced, fails, and breath gives life to no one. Recognizing the name of the actress and of the figure she feigns, Veronica Caina, you see in the end the letters E, N, D, which really get the script going, there, far away in the distance, where the grey screen is black, and at the same time you close the last white page of the book, E, N, D. Turn off the light in that moment, or wait just a little. Close your eyes as you close the book, and having freed your sight of all the black and white bits of screen and page, light and paper, you move your head to the right and watch the blue sky from the blue plain. From high up through the window, you watch the bluish blood that floats above all below, house and square, above memories fading away. Even as you watch, the very instant, 2 butterflies come to your bed. In the end, come to your hands that have just dropped a book from the sky. You breathe on their fragile wings. You fall onto the bed, and it occurs to you that dreams have not been the effects of death, nor the causes of beauty. You bear in your hand, muse, the blue wings of having lived, beneath a sky that is not made of images, when you breathe your breath above. Thank you, Alfred. I thought then that I would read 2 elegies for friends, Berkeley friends, who died in untimely ways. The first I dedicate to Joel Fineman, the wonderful Shakespearean scholar and incredibly witty critic, who died in 1989. This poem, which goes back to an earlier collection, was written in 1991 at the beginning of the really hideous First Gulf War. And there are some allusions to that because I was thinking of how much Joel would have been disgusted by what was happening 2 years after his death. And then there was that moment, the one in the overshaded garden, as we sat on the grass in the sunshine, the air still rinsed with recent rain, and the shrubs alive with it, talking, taking that air. Can you recall the pungency of basil? It rises from the spray, from the brown bag. And here I am, thinking to make you dishes of white pasta, reeking of this green herb. But you're gone now, and can't be at my table. Sometimes it seems too many have gone, and always at the wrong time or in the wrong way, till we begin to wish their fate on others, less close, but nearer at hand. Even the whole of what we want is simple. The evening light, green through the vines, reading, the comfort of your mother's creaking chair. The pleasures transfer are common, escape us. Too many are gone now, to the south, to the east, beyond the horizon of lamplight. So many they no longer count, as ash still drifting after the technical storm. Too many to be buried apart. And as I came to you in the morning to touch you, it was your body I missed. The whiteness of the linen was too much in the stripped room. And the second of these is for a good friend, not only myself, but as some people here in the room, Michael Rogan. Just two little things about this poem. Mike favored smoking small cigars, and in writing the poem, I was thinking of Mallarmé's beautiful poem, Tout l'âme résumée, which is about blowing smoke rings, and some translation from that comes into the poem. The other was Mike's extraordinary commitment to a tradition of materialist thinking, and I was thinking of Benjamin's wonderful lines in the German tragedy book where he talks about the loyalty of the courtier to the world of things. Fade, or perhaps fad. The tears in things, smoke threads the tissue, the fading linen frayed to the shoulders. The truth of him, his faith to the object. Ash slips from the ring. The persistence of the dream in the jacket's frayed shoulders. Lingers a smile, a smoke net fraying from the lips. Smoke marbles the air. Hand to the brow, a precise space for the other. Loyalty to things in their vanishing. I suppose that the next poem that I wanted to read is also an elegy of a kind. A little while ago, in an odd moment, I was trying to translate some of Paul Celan's early poems, which are very, very different from the poems that most of us know as the kind of typical Celan poems. Very rhythmic, based on German medieval poetry, full of images of knights in armor and so forth. Not at all what you think of when you think of Paul Celan. And it just so happened that I was also reading at the same time the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, at least reading him in English translation. And suddenly I was very struck, not only by similarities in imagery, but also similarities in rhythm between the two poets. And so I started doing a kind of crossover between the two poems, interlineating their lines together. And then discovered, to my surprise, that not only had Darwish lived in Paris shortly after Celan's death, when he was in exile after the brutal destruction of the Palestinian liberation offices in Beirut, and also the destruction of the Palestinian archive where Darwish worked, but that he had read Celan quite carefully and actually incorporate some of Celan's lines into his own poetry. The poem is called The Olive Net, partly because of the hideous destruction of olive trees in Palestine at the moment. Over 800,000 have gone down under the occupation. The German intertext that comes in here is based on a little line or two in Mignon's song in Goethe's Wilhelm Meister, where the German is "Do you know the land where the lemon trees grow?" And this one is "Do you know the land where the olive trees grow?" and some variations beyond. The olive net. Kennst du das Land, wo die Olivenbäume blühen? Where are you now? Gone in the mist of your Seine net. I am you when I am I. Together with me, recall the sky of Paris. We went to Aden, ahead of our dreams. The moon was shining on the wing of a crow. We gazed at the sea. Eyes, shining with the rain that poured when God bade me drink. I love the rainfall on the women of distant meadows. I love the glittering water and the scent of stone. We drank rain. Rain we drank. East of the springs in a forest of olives, my father embraced his forsaken shadow. My mother's hair was never white. What can we say to the embers of your eyes? What will absence tell your mother? You fill up the urns here, and you feed your heart. I have a saturated meadow. In the deep horizon of my word, I have a moon, a bird's sustenance, and an immortal olive tree. I am lighter. In front of strangers, I sing. Kennst du das Land, wo die Olivenbäume blühten? March combs its cotton over the almond trees. I gaze upon trees guarding the night from the night, and the sleep of those who would wish me death. Count the almonds. Count what was bitter and kept you awake. I would break open my shadow for the scent of almond to float in a cloud of dust and grow tired on these slopes. Come closer and listen. From the nuts we shall time, and we teach it to walk. Ours is a country of words. Talk. Talk. Let me rest my road against a stone. It is time the stone made an effort to flower. The pebble's eyes are not lilies. Make me bitter. Count me among the almonds. I will slog over this endless road to its end. Kennst du das Land, wo die Olivenbäume verrotten? God's olive trees rise with the language, and an azure smoke wafts through this day. I touch the dove's ring and hear flute song in the abandoned fig tree. It still bloomed, as we mixed yes and no, a star to burnish our mirrors. Where should we go after the last border? Where should the birds fly after the last sky? See, the land was ours. See how we barred the way to the star. Here or there, our blood will plant olive trees. Kennst du das Land, wo die Olivenbäume ausgerotten werden? Green as mold is the house of oblivion. There at last you stepped into the name that is yours, here in the final passage. Where are you now? Gone in the olive waters. We were dead and were able to breathe. The next little sequence, it's called Quadraten, in homage to Samuel Beckett, and not only the last plays that he wrote, which were mimes called Quadraten, but also to his own poetry, which the most beautiful, I think, are little quatrains. And this is a series of quatrains that I think of as kind of dismantled epigrams. That smile dims to a trace. You did not want it taken. The red thread fades in me, I turn into the retaining wall. What you withhold as you speak lies beyond lying. A marked man tips the scale, feather breath tilts you. Listen with your multiple ear into the interval, into the between times you lean on. The white one, she bends into the whiteness, the white one. String on string to the white note, yet. A shout, shouted in the morning, a cry, call and response, is it? The dismay of thought is history, sway of the unforeseen. X out the name, no issue grips you, will-less. A stone song entered into the black book, what stands forth in the dark room. All that remains, this steel nail, a chink on the clinker. And I thought I'd end for now with a little sequence from Arkansas, from the volume that's within it that's actually called Arkansas. The poem is called Tinos. Tinos is a Greek island in the Cyclades. And Cyclades, if you recall, are probably the oldest part of Greek civilization, if that's what we call it, if they finally found it, where the amazing flat pre-Hellenic sculptures come from. But the time I was at Tinos for a short while, there was a hideous wind blowing from the north, a very dry wind that made the land almost unbearable. So this is not a poem about, Greece that we all love. There is a brief reference to Niobe in one of the poems. Niobe, the woman who challenged the gods and was turned to stone. Niobe weeping, if you remember from Hamlet. Tinos. The terraced isle is marble to your mouth. A greeny sill breaks the north wind. The salt weave mats your hair, a grief twined in a grief. White doves slant across the wind. On a too bright sky, no clouds, too few. Dry clouds over a burden of steps. The baked shelves, stone after stone. Too old to bear. A weird wind in your teeth, your salt-caked hair. In the wind's cuff, shuttle and dodge. A scratch staggers across your lens. Salt and oil drew your mouth. What do you see? You saw. What do you hear? The needle jams in the floor to steal erotic joy from the day. Wet, the twisted towel braided at your gullet, the voice box squeezed to drip. Oil and salt chafe the throat. This is the full Penelope. She steals erotic joy from the day. Death splintered into constellations, the timeline shattered. The isle is full of voices. What do you hear at night when the north wind strums the cloud base? In the clear light of noon, which is not, lath thin, the tympanum athwart the sill strums, and you are sand against the white sheet, sleeping. A stone troop rolls north. Along the gully, the hardened tears mark the lintel. Oh, my savage children, my ravaged hide. A dust fume lifts from the rosiers. The still damp flags. Salt tracks tauten her cheekbones a wind-dried eye withholds the downpour. The doves were blown about the sky, lost bitter blue of the sky, some intense mosaic rule in disarray. To the puzzlement of angels, maybe, this fury of disappearance. Step up the unstridable steps, a north wind streaming in the cloud base marbles the blue. The cleated cables strum. Something too old, the noon-scorched layers, an ill wind bears down. The shutter slams in your face.
Thanks.